You know the moment. You probably know it better than you want to admit. You sit through a sermon, or a prophecy seminar, or one of those Sabbath afternoon presentations about the close of probation, the time of trouble, the mark of the beast. The speaker is sincere. The verses are real. You agree with everything being said. And somewhere around the middle of the talk, something shifts inside your chest. A quiet weight settles in, not peace, not hope, something heavier. You walk to your car afterward, and the parking lot feels strangely silent. People around you are smiling, talking about lunch, asking about the kids. You smile back. You answer normally. But underneath, you are carrying something you cannot quite put into words. A small, persistent ache. A question that will not go away. What if I am not ready? From the outside, no one would suspect it. You attend faithfully. You know the doctrines. You can find your way through Daniel and Revelation without a study guide. Maybe you teach a class. Maybe you lead a small group. Maybe people come to you with their questions because you seem so settled in the truth. But at night, when the house finally goes quiet, the thought comes back. If the final crisis happened tomorrow morning, would you actually stand? If everything you have ever depended on were stripped away, would your faith hold? Or would you find out in the worst possible moment that what you thought was a relationship was mostly a routine? You do not say this out loud. You would not even know who to say it to. So you carry it. Quietly, privately, year after year. And it is one of the strangest things about Adventist life. A fear so common, so widely shared, sitting inside so many sincere believers at the same time, and almost no one ever names it. That fear has a name. We just rarely say it out loud. For a lot of Adventists, this fear did not start last year. It started somewhere in childhood. Somewhere in the middle of a sermon, you were too young to understand, but old enough to feel. You remember sitting in the pew, swinging your legs, because they did not quite reach the floor, listening to a preacher describe the time of trouble. The Sunday law, the mark of the beast, people running into the mountains, believers being hunted. And you remember walking out into the church lobby afterward and feeling, for the first time, that the world was a frightening place, and Jesus might come at any moment to sort everyone out. You went home that night and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you would still be a Christian when it really mattered. You were 8 years old. That feeling never fully left. It just got quieter, more polished, more integrated into the rhythm of ordinary life. By the time you were a teenager, you were already in the habit of checking yourself. Was that song too worldly? Was that friendship pulling you away? Was that movie something you would be ashamed of if Jesus came back during it? You did not call it self-surveillance. You called it being serious about your walk. But the constant monitoring left a residue, a low hum of anxiety underneath your faith. A small compromise could ruin an entire week. A skipped morning devotion could shadow a whole Sabbath. And then, somewhere along the way, a thought began to creep in that you never quite said out loud. What if I am already becoming Laodicean? What if I look fine on the outside and do not even know what I really am? None of this came from people who meant you harm. The parents, the pastors, the Sabbath school teachers. Most of them genuinely loved the truth. They wanted their children to be safe in the last days. They believed they were preparing you. But somewhere in the handoff, the message shifted in your heart. Christ is coming for you slowly became, Christ is coming, and you had better be ready, or else. And that is not actually how the Bible talks about his return. Take the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. Most of us have heard it explained many times. 10 young women waiting for the bridegroom. 5 wise, 5 foolish. The bridegroom delays. They all fall asleep. When the cry finally comes, only 5 are ready to go in. Notice something easy to miss. The foolish virgins were not lazy. They were not openly rebellious. They showed up. They had lamps. They were waiting with the others. From the outside, no one could have told them apart from the wise ones. The difference was the oil. And the oil is not something you can produce in a panic at midnight. It is something gathered quietly over time, in the ordinary days when no one is watching. A relationship sustained in small, unglamorous moments. Mornings with Scripture, honest prayers, patient obedience, a walk with God that kept going when nothing dramatic was happening. Readiness, in that parable, is not intensity. It is the steady presence of something you have been carrying with you all along. Then read 1 John chapter 4, verses 17 and 18. John is writing to ordinary believers, and he says love is made complete in us so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment. And then this line, perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and the one who fears is not yet made perfect in love. Sit with that for a moment. John assumes that mature Christian experience moves a person away from fear of judgment, not deeper into it. Listen to how Scripture talks about the second coming. Paul calls it the blessed hope. He tells the Thessalonians to comfort one another with these words. John writes that when we see him, we shall be like him. Hope, comfort, likeness. That is the language of someone waiting for a person they love. So how did so many sincere believers end up feeling the opposite? The Bible is honest about something the church sometimes forgets. God's people have always been weaker than they wanted to be. Look at Elijah. 1 Kings 19. This is the man who had just stood alone on Mount Carmel against 450 prophets of Baal. Fire fell from heaven. The people fell on their faces. It was the most extraordinary spiritual victory in his lifetime. And within 24 hours, he is sitting under a juniper tree in the wilderness, begging God to let him die. He is exhausted. He is afraid of a woman named Jezebel. He feels alone. And the prophet who called down fire from heaven now cannot get up off the ground. What does God do? He does not lecture him. He does not remind him of the miracle on Carmel. He sends an angel with bread and water and lets him sleep. And then he feeds him again. Twice. Before any conversation happens at all. The disciples in Gethsemane are not much different. Jesus is in the deepest agony of his life, asking them simply to watch with him. And they fall asleep. 3 times. Jesus wakes them gently and says, "The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." There is no scolding. He sees them clearly. He loves them anyway. And then there is Peter, sincere Peter. The night before the cross, he tells Jesus he is ready to die for him. Hours later, he is warming his hands at a fire and denying he ever knew the man. He meant every word he said. He still could not stand. What did Jesus do? He looked at him, and later, by the sea, he restored him. 3 questions, 3 answers, a whole future given back. The end-time church will not be a church of spiritual superheroes. It will be a church of ordinary people, kept by someone stronger than themselves. Let me describe something. See if any of it sounds familiar. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing your mind does, before your feet even touch the floor, is run a quiet inventory. How did yesterday go spiritually? Did you pray enough? Did you give in to that thing again? Are you slipping? You sit down for devotions. You read Readiness chapter. You close the Bible, and instead of feeling fed, you feel tired. A little heavier than when you started. You are not entirely sure why. You pray, and somewhere underneath the prayer there is an anxiety you do not name out loud. A small voice that wonders if God is actually listening, or if he is finally tired of you. Someone at church mentions the time of trouble, or probation closing, or the final crisis, and your stomach tightens for a moment. You smile and nod. You change the subject when you can. There are certain sermons you avoid, not because you disagree with them, but because you know that if you listen, you will be shaky for 3 days afterward. You will lie in bed, checking your spiritual pulse. You will replay every compromise from the last 6 months. You will not sleep well. Sabbath comes. You go to church. You greet people warmly. You sing the hymns. And somewhere in the middle of the sermon, a thought slides in quietly that you have never said to another human being. What if I am Laodiceans and do not even know it? Sighs. Hear me carefully. This is not a sign of weak faith. This is often a sign of a very sincere heart that was handed a very heavy weight far too early. Children were never meant to carry the spiritual vigilance of grown men and women. And grown men and women were never meant to carry it alone. Somewhere along the way, the relationship quietly shifted. It became less about loving God and more about not failing Him. And this is the place where Scripture has something genuinely healing to say. Somewhere along the way, the order got reversed. For a lot of sincere Adventists, the picture in their mind looks something like this. Your readiness depends mostly on you, your effort, your obedience, your watchfulness, your performance. And Christ's righteousness is a kind of safety net, available if you fall short. He covers the gaps. He fills in what is missing. It feels humble. It feels serious. It feels like taking sin seriously, but it is backwards. Listen to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25. He is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by Him, seeing He ever liveth to make intercession for them. Read that slowly. He saves to the uttermost, not to the halfway point, not up to the line where your effort takes over. To the uttermost. And He does it because He ever lives to make intercession for them. That is His present, ongoing work right now, while you are listening to this. Then Romans chapter 8. Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? It is God that justifies. Who is he that condemns? It is Christ that died, yea rather, that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us. The investigative judgment, when you read it with the rest of Scripture, is not God going through your file looking for a reason to reject you. It is Christ presenting His people, covered in His righteousness, before a watching universe. Readiness is not something you generate by trying harder. It is something Christ works in people who keep coming back to Him. Slow down for a moment. Picture where Christ actually is right now. Not a distant figure on a throne somewhere, watching with folded arms to see how you do. Picture the heavenly sanctuary. Picture the high priest who walked through Galilee, who fell asleep in a boat from exhaustion, who wept at a grave, who was tempted in every point as we are. That same person, He is not waiting to evaluate you when this is all over. He is working for you right now, while you are listening to this sentence. He knows your name. He knows the fear you have carried since you were a child. He has carried your weakness in His own body. And He is making intercession for you in this moment. He is not hoping you will be good enough. He is the reason you can be ready at all. Listen to Jude, verse 24. Now unto Him that is able to keep you from falling, and to present you faultless before the presence of His glory with exceeding joy. Look at those verbs. He keeps. You do not keep yourself. He keeps you. He presents. You do not walk yourself into the throne room. He presents you, faultless. Not because you finally got everything right, because of who is holding you up, with exceeding joy. There is no reluctance in Him. He is not doing this with a sigh. He is doing it with joy. The faithful in the last days are not going to be the spiritual athletes. They will not be the ones who finally became strong enough. They will be the ones who let Him hold them. The ones who kept coming back. The ones who learned to lean. The fear that you will not be ready often comes from quietly forgetting who is actually responsible for keeping you ready. It was never you. It was always Him. So, what does any of this look like on a Monday morning? When the dishes are still in the sink, the kids need to be dropped off, and you have an inbox waiting that already feels too full. A few small things. This week, when you open the Bible, try reading at least one passage with a different question in mind. Not, am I doing okay? But, what does Christ look like here? Especially toward weak people. Read the Gospels that way for a few days. Watch as how he talks to the woman at the well, how he responds to the Father who says, I believe, help my unbelief. How he looks at Peter after the denial. Let that picture sit with you before you go anywhere else. When you pray, try starting somewhere new. Instead of immediately bringing the long list of concerns, begin with thanksgiving that Christ is interceding for you right now. Just sit there for a minute, then bring everything else. When the fear thought comes, what if I am not ready? Do not argue with it. You will lose that argument every time. Answer it with a verse instead. 1 John 4, verse 18, Jude 24, Hebrews 7, verse 25. Pick one. Memorize it. Use it. Learn to notice the difference between conviction and condemnation. Conviction draws you toward God. Condemnation makes you want to hide from Him. One is from the Spirit, the other is not. Most of what keeps you awake at night is not the Spirit. Tell someone, a pastor, a mature believer, a friend who actually knows the Lord. You were not meant to carry this alone, and when Sabbath comes this week, let it be what it was always meant to be. Rest in finished work, not a weekly performance review. If you have been carrying this fear for a long time, I want to talk to you for a minute. Maybe you came to Jesus when you were young. You sang the songs. You memorized the verses. Somewhere along the way, the joy got quieter. The seriousness stayed. The fear stayed. The joy went somewhere you cannot quite find anymore. You still believe. You still show up. You still know the doctrines. You are just tired. I want you to hear this slowly. Jesus is not coming back to catch you off guard. He is coming back for you. The same Christ who sent an angel with bread for Elijah under that juniper tree. The same Christ who woke his sleeping disciples in Gethsemane without shame. The same Christ who looked at Peter after the denial and later restored him by the sea. That same Christ is the one preparing a place for you right now. Being ready was never meant to feel like dread. It was meant to feel like waiting for someone you love. Before you close this video, sit with one question. What would change in your walk with God this week if you actually believed? He is more committed to your readiness than you are. Just sit with that. There is no rush. He is not in a hurry to leave you.